It's not quite as bad as I thought. I don't know. I think I might throw that sucker back in there. Let it go another 215,000. Welcome back to the Tent Shed Garage. If you haven't figured it out by now, we're doing a steering column, or more specifically, intermediate steering shaft. 2006 Ford Freestyle. Now, there's been no videos that I could find on the YouTubes about how to do this repair on this specific vehicle. There's the bottom of it. This is called an intermediate steering shaft by the manufacturer and by most manufacturers, or rather the vehicle manufacturer. Dorman calls it the lower steering shaft, I believe. And that's where it mates to the steering box. That's right where our problem is. There's some play in the U-joint there, which has failed, and looking at it, it makes sense. I don't think it owes anybody a thing. The car has over 200,000 miles, so I've been putting this repair off. I no longer feel safe driving the car. Gotta do it. It's worth mentioning here that the bit of advice that I've seen in multiple places is not to let the steering wheel turn. Okay, so I got a bungee from that stupid handle in the dashboard to my wheel. All right, and that, that information also came from the factory tech manual. Once you know why, it seems fairly obvious. The clock spring inside the wheel will get damaged. Now, I think they're talking about more than just like a few degrees of turning. Regardless, that's the information that you need going into this, apart from the skill level, which I am not an auto mechanic. If you don't feel comfortable doing this, don't. I have this clamp to undo here at the boot where the bearing supports the shaft. And then looking further up, it's hard to see from here, there's another U-joint that needs undoing. Right up there. I think we gotta take this plastic panel down, and that battery is gonna have to get disconnected because that dinging is really annoying. All right, crucial that you use the right size sockets. If you're not a DIYer, you know that. If you're a DIYer, don't mix up your metric and your standard. That's how you round off heads, and try and stick with 6-point. So this is 7mm up here. And one of the ways I know that is the fact that nothing on this car is standard. It's all metric. Down there, where I'll be looking for it later. Okay, rinse and repeat. You might be asking why I'm wearing gloves. In addition to protecting my hands from you never know what, it's also cold here. So you can think of me as a sissy if you want. I don't care. I like to adjust how I'm working to be as comfortable as possible, and then I can keep working longer and I get more done. Aha! Yeah. up here. There we go. Focus. There we go. That's the next bolt that needs undoing. All right. I don't really know if this is going to make much difference, but in at least one how-to that I saw, the host marked on the shaft the part he's not removing. So that would be the upper shaft or the steering column proper in this case. He marked where the split in the U-joint was in relation to that shaft so that he could align the new part later. Now, I get the feeling my new shaft is not going to be perfect. That's a pretty good mark. Okay. It's not going to be perfect, I don't think, because it's a Dorman. And sorry, Dorman. Your parts kind of suck. Anyway, there we go. We got a mark to go by. Let's try and get that out of there. All right, so believe it or not, I cracked that loose with a 1/4-inch socket. 1/4-inch drive, I should say. It's a 10mm bolt. 10mm head, I should say. I don't know, it's probably like an 8 by 125 or 1.0 or whatever. Metric, yeah. They made it a foolproof system. I guess we can fight about that another time. If this channel had any viewers, there'd be comments about that. Okay, so this bolt's in okay shape. Got some rust in the threads. The car is, well, 18 years old, so, you know, that's kind of to be expected. I'll wire brush that. Not too worried about it. I gotta spread that open a little bit, and for that I brought this little pry bar. Let's see if this does the trick. It feels pretty loose already. Yeah, she's sliding on down. All right, and there's a bit of a square shape to the bottom of the shaft. I didn't know that. The bottom of the column, I should say. That's in the service manual. The upper part that goes directly to the steering wheel is considered the column, and this part that we're replacing is called the steering shaft. The manufacturer of the vehicle is calling that the intermediate shaft. So that's what you're going to look for when you're trying to buy the part. That, or what Dorman calls it, the lower shaft. All right, I got my Amazon thread checker. And here we go. There she is. M8 by 1.25. M8 metric 8mm diameter 1.25 thread pitch. Twin socket, power built ratchet. Okay, we're not talking expensive tools here. All right, something pretty cool about this power built ratchet. There's the part number for it. This is a nice long 1/2-inch drive flex head. You can see those ridges, those teeth? It's a flex head that locks in place so that it's not just flopping about as you're trying to work, which is awesome. Anyway, there we go. We cracked that baby loose. Almost no effort at all. So now I'm gonna reach up there with a 1/4-inch socket and run that the rest of the way out. I took a picture of the position of this for reference for installing the new one, because I don't believe after spraying PB Blaster up there that I'm going to successfully get paint on anything to use a paint pen to mark it. So I think instead what's gonna have to happen is I'm gonna have to do my best to position it based on a picture, which I think shouldn't be too hard. Why not give it the old college try, huh? Put that with some brake cleaner and try and get the PB off of it. And, dead soldier. Oh, by the way, I should mention how I'm staying warm right now, because you might be able to tell. There's some snow outside. I got that thing, which, not worth the 80 bucks I paid at Costco a few years ago, but this thing, as seen on Project Farm, worth the 40 bucks or so that I paid on Amazon. I think it's pretty good. Don't run them both on the same circuit. Okay, let's try this again. These things are worth their weight in gold. You don't have them, do yourself a favor, get some. Okay. I don't think I can film this. I'll put you down a minute. Mark on the left was not in the right spot. That fatter mark is more aligned with the split in the lower U of the U joint. Now, is it necessary to be dead on? Probably not, because if we look at our new part, as AVE would say, focus you. You see that corner in there? There's a pattern, there's a shape to the shaft and a corresponding shape to this. Now the 1 and the 3, oh, I'm not really sure what that means. I guess it has to go this way. It didn't include any installation instructions. I knew that going into this. Like I said, I looked at the factory tech manual. That's really not very helpful either. I've seen better IKEA manuals. I didn't film it, and I'm sorry about that. I'm not working with the best equipment here. Don't tell the missus. So, I have this fairly long pry bar. I don't know what it is. It's about 8 I don't know. Call it nearly 2 feet long. It's probably like a 22-inch or something. Okay. I used that and the persuader. Okay. Hand drilling hammer. And I just gave it a little tappy. Tap, tap, taparoo. Initially, what I was trying to do was open up this crack here, but really what it wound up doing was just driving the whole shaft up a bit. So I realized I needed to lay off because I was probably going to drive it too hard, and I hadn't freed this up yet. Now this whole thing, which was nestled in there, right in this boot, that came out as a complete assembly, and I don't know if it was really supposed to. So next course of action is to try and get that off of that to move it to that. Maybe. All right, it's always good to compare the old part to the new part so that you know when your installation happens what hurdles you're gonna have to jump, if any. Okay, and this Dorman seems to be a reasonable facsimile of the original, although I'm not sure why this is sitting lower than that. I have to figure that out as I go, I suppose. But as far as the pronouns, and I mean the orientation, this and this are in the same relative position to these. Okay, so if you look, this is offset from that by approximately 90 degrees, I would say, and I seem to have the same offset on the factory part, and that's what we're looking for. And this is what allows the column to stay somewhat centered going through the firewall. Okay, it's important. Now I'm gonna have to try and get that off and transfer it. And I don't know about the indexing, not really gonna worry about it too much. I just want it to be accessible for pinching the clamp when and if I need to later. All right, got her off. Took a little doing. What you have to do is pinch this clamp. Don't expect to remove it. You gotta hold it pinched using, I used pump pliers, which was not the best method because I lost my grip on it several times, and as I was trying to work the thing off, every time it sprung shut again, I took that corner in the tip of my thumb, which kind of hurt. Hey, gloves. So, now it's off, okay? And it's gonna slide back onto the new part in the same orientation. I think first I wanna put a rag in there, clean that up, make it look somewhat newish. Okay, slowly working the bearing back into place. Now, I've employed the help of some silicone lubricant because the inside of this is somewhat soft and it's getting hung up on the new part right around here, okay? So I actually gave it a little bit of persuasion. I don't know if I necessarily recommend that. This sleeve was also in the wrong position on the new part. It needed to come down like this one. I persuaded that as well, again, with the thumb detector. Okay, hence the little nicks in the new part. Who cares? Anyway, and this part, this is kind of cool for those of you who don't know. This is what they call collapsing. Mostly the purpose of that, if you know your automotive history, is so that this thing doesn't impale the driver in a collision. Was an innovation given to us by none other than Preston Tucker, who was run out of business by the Big Three in 1948. Okay, it took a little effort, but now it's in its home. What I had to do was squeeze this consistently, just hold it that way with my water pump pliers, which, as you can see, is a little precarious. But, you know, if you hold your hand steady and you've had enough coffee or hair of the dog, you can do it. But what it took while doing that was some gentle taps with another short pry bar, okay? And I really don't recommend using something like this. I was very careful, and I'm kind of practiced at this sort of thing. So I did it without damaging this, but this thing is just plastic, okay? It's like nylon. It's a little durable, but not much. What I could have, should have, and would have done if I weren't lazy, go inside and get my tiny little like 4-ounce hammer, all right, and you know, just give it some taps around the perimeter. You don't want to go too hard for too long, too many times in one spot. You want to, while holding this, which is the tricky part, go around. So what I did was I stood it up on its end and I kind of supported it between my legs, and I just went around and I just knocked it down, okay? And now it's in its home, which is all the way up against here. If you refer back to the earlier parts of the video, this was all the way up against this lip. The only reason when I removed the shaft completely that it wasn't in that spot anymore, I believe, was those tap-tap-tap-aroos that I gave here with this. I inadvertently pushed the whole assembly out of the bearing a little bit. Okay, so there we have that. Mucho bettero. All right, let it go back in a little easier. After this setup, well, you know, tain't professional. You could probably go to your local hardware store and get something like this. Okay. See what's going on. Get a little lubrication. Wipe off the heavy X. Stick this sucker in its home. Okay, now that I have this in the boot, I am electing to leave this loose for now. I don't know if that's really the right way, and by right way I mean the way the pros do it. But the reason I've decided to do that is so that I can have full, easy manipulation of this end to get it in its home before trying to connect it up top. Because if I connect it up top first, then it's going to be harder to swing it around to the position I need down here. Okay, something I noticed down below that I really wasn't paying any attention to earlier, and maybe you noticed if you were watching closely in the video. You see right there, just south of my mark, south of that orange mark that I made, you see that notch? They call it a dish. The shaft is dished, okay? And that's important. I'll show you why. It tells you where the bolt has to go. Okay? So there really is, on this car anyway, no screwing up the position of the bolt hole, because the shaft of the bolt needs to fit in that dish. And you'll see what I'm talking about if you're working on your own and you go to run the bolt in, the pinch bolt as they call it. Okay, it needs to have clearance on that one side of the shaft. All right, and also there's a shape to this thing, so they made it kind of dummy proof, which is good for a guy like me. And you know, it's not necessarily the same on every car. Okay, I don't know how this compares to other makes and models. I don't know how it compares to other years of this vehicle, or its its cousins and twins from Fomoco. So just, you know, take that for what it's worth. Don't go getting all Dunning and Kruger on this thing, you know. And if you don't know about that, the Dunning and Kruger effect. Dunning and Kruger effect is something you should read up on, because just because you did this one steering column doesn't mean you know how to do them all. It doesn't mean you know how every single one of them is assembled, how they're all put together, how they're all constructed, how they're all arranged, and how to do one on every year, make, and model of every car ever built. There's different designs out there. Stay humble. Little shop air. Blue 242. Okay. Now, a little bit of that stuff goes a long way. I probably overdid it. We'll see how much of it remains as I get the bolt in its home, because it's in kind of a difficult to reach spot. You always want to degrease a bolt before adding thread locker. It needs to be clean. Alright. if you can't tell what I'm doing, I'm pulling the end U-joint down on this. It kind of wants to spring back up into the cabin. I think because the boot is so rigid, that rubber boot in there, it's kind of pulling up on the support bearing, which is kind of a misnomer on this thing. But that bearing, that nylon piece that we banged into place, is getting yanked up by the rubber boot and then pulling the end of this away from the dished part of the shaft that the bolt needs to sit in. So my marks were not really necessary earlier, those orange marks that I made. It's good practice. It's definitely good practice, especially if you're unfamiliar with the job that you're about to do. It's a good idea to have some of these things on hand. Okay, I got this for like $1 in a liquidator type store where they sell things that didn't sell in other stores or something like that. If I can park the camera up in here. All right. Hopefully that doesn't fall and hit me in the face. All right. Ah, jeez. Aha! Just give it a little tappy. Tap, tap, taparoo. Sometimes I wonder if Adam Sandler knows that every mechanic quotes him, like all the time. A little presumptuous putting everything back together before the test drive. I think this is a good repair. Now, as my father once said, don't go ape shit. It's mere plastic. Just snug these down. I don't want to break it. This one's for all my dead homies. Oh, good. They made it possible to do a numbers matching restoration.